Welcome to my first battle report. This is the Battles for Hull, England, number 1, Reserved Demolition. If you haven't yet watched the video giving the background to this campaign, I suggest you do that before you watch this video. Right, let's move on now and look at the scenario.
A group of evil armies, the Concentric Alliance, has spotted the opportunity to extract gallium. Landing as far as possible from the population at Port Harold, the interlopers established a base at Gall Haven, and sent out raiding parties to inspect the abandoned mines, travelling as far north as Half Moon Mine near Blood River. By the end of the mining season, several tons of refined gallium ore was ready to be transported south before the winter storms set in. Crossing Blood River on the old mining track, the Alliance convoy crossed the plain and joined the old coast road, heading towards the bridge over South River. But bad weather was not the only thing that the Concentric Alliance would have to face. A large force of good armies from the Northern Coalition had landed at Port Harold, and had gained knowledge of the Alliance's intentions. The coalition intended to follow up the convoy by land, and send a naval force of salamanders to capture the crossing over South River. News of the coalition's intentions had reached the Alliance. Aware that if the crossing over South River was captured, the coalition could advance on Gall Haven almost unopposed. The Alliance determined that it was critical that the bridge should not fall into enemy hands. The stage was set for a major battle at the crossing site. The coalition plan is to send south a force of 2,000 points of Undead Brotherhood, half to chase the convoy and half to outflank it and capture the bridge. An overwhelming force of salamanders is set to arrive on turn 6 and will capture the bridge if not already destroyed. The Alliance has 750 points of Twilight Kin, escorting the convoy south, with another 750 points of Abyssal Dwarfs guarding the bridge. Abyssal Dwarf engineers are preparing explosives to demolish the bridge, and the bridge can be destroyed from turn 4 onwards, as long as the Alliance holds one of the firing points. If the coalition holds both firing points, the bridge cannot be destroyed. The Alliance objectives, in priority order, are 1. To recover the gallium ore across the South River. 2. To destroy the bridge to prevent the coalition form crossing. 3. To recover as many Alliance units as possible across South River. 4. To destroy as many coalition units as possible. The coalition is trying to capture both the gallium ore and the river crossing.
Okay, now we've had a scenario. Let's have a quick look at the battlefield. You can see the bridge itself there. On the left there's the Old Coast Road coming from the north towards the bridge. And there's the South River, which is height 1, blocking terrain. You can see there the 2 firing points with dwarf engineers already busy preparing the demolition charges. And there's a view from the bridge looking across at the battlefield. Let's look at the armies themselves. This is the Abyssal Dwarves who are providing the bridge demolition guard. And here we have got a regiment of lesser obsidian golems, a horde of lesser obsidian golems, an overmaster with a blade of slashing, an ironcaster who's been buffed up with Surge 8, and a greater obsidian golem. And I think you can see that to hold the ground there, the defense 6 of those golems will be good. We've got a bit of healing if required, and we've got the ability with the monster golem, the greater obsidian golem on a square base. He can stand in the middle of the bridge and can turn either way and then be surged by the ironcaster into enemy at either end of the bridges. The Twilight Kin who are escorting the convoy. There we've got a troop of Dark Knights who have got the Brew of Strength. We have got a troop of Heralds of Woe, we've got a horde of abyssal riders with the wine of elven kind, and we have got a dark lord mounted on a horse. And the thinking here is that with the nimble units, the wine of elven kind and the heralds of woe and also the individual, they'll be able to get around and to block the enemy from charging and capturing the convoy, and the knights gives a bit of strength. This horde in particular will be able to combat any large unit the enemy throw at us. This is the convoy itself here, and it's represented by a single wagon. And the rules of convoy are quite simple. It can't be attacked in the conventional sense, but enemy units in their turn can move into combat, into close contact with it. And at the start of a movement phase for convoy, any enemy units in close contact with it can effectively attack it. The defence of the convoy is 5. If more than 6 attacks are successful against the convoy, then it reduces its speed that turn by 1 inch, and its actual speed is 7 inches, and it's shambling, so it cannot move at the double. It cannot be destroyed or harmed in the conventional sense, however. Additionally, it cannot be blocked by individuals standing in front of it. It will simply roll over them and move onwards. Looking at the Undead Brotherhood, this is a force which will be chasing the convoy, and we've got here a troop of Swain's Villain Rangers. We've got 2 regiments of Order of the Brotherhood. One has got the Brew of Haste and the other's got the Wine of Elven kind, and they are both in the Undaunted Crusaders formation, as is the Exemplar of the Brotherhood, who is also equipped with the Inspiring Talisman. And they're joined by a Forsaken Beast with Breath Attack 10, Ensnare and Vicious. And the thinking here is that the Undaunted Crusaders formation allows these units to move through terrain without being hindered. These are already able to move through terrain as they have stealthy, and therefore anybody shooting at them we're suffering -2 to hit. And we've also got the beast over here who will provide a bit of extra crushing strength if required. Now the force to attack the bridge has gone for an airborne force as much as anything, and here we've got a regiment of Order of Redemption, and they've got the Brew of Strength. So they're going to be a hard hitting fast moving unit. We've got a troop of Villain Reconnoitrers, and then we've got the Order of Forsaken Horde with an Exemplar Forsaker with a Blade of Slashing, and another Forsaken Beast here with a Breath Attack. And they will be moving to capture the bridge, with the flying units obviously able to cross the river and capture the southern edge if required. That's a view of a battlefield with the Concentric Alliance having deployed, and you can see down on the bridge here, as we said, we've got the Greater Obsidian Golem standing on the bridge, and he can be turned through 90 degrees to move either direction and then surged, if required, to support the units at either end. And there you can see the convoy and its support force just moving on to the table. There's a close-up of the defences at the bridge. The Abyssal Dwarfs engineers still working on their charges. And there's the units about to move onto the coast road and move south. So turn 1. All those units are going to move, and that's where they end up. And as you can see on the left there, the horde of Abyssal Riders laying ready to move and block any units following up behind. But it does bring home to you, movement 7 for the convoy does not bring them very far onto the table and not that much closer to the bridge. There's an overview of a battlefield showing the positions at the end of the turn 1. And here's now our enemy's turn 1, and you can see on the right over here the bridge for attacking force moving on and moving well forward. And up here, we'll see in more detail in a moment, but you can see the enemy coming on, ready to threaten the convoy. That gives you a better view looking from the bridge towards the enemy. There they are advancing. And then over here you can see how they've moved up. So we've got over here one regiment of the cavalry has moved through the forest ready to outflank the force here, and one coming straight down the road supported with the beast and the exemplar ready to attack in the rear, and we've got Swain's Villain Rangers coming on there ready to add their effort if required. Because it's the first turn, they only just entered the table. They are not allowed to shoot or to charge in turn 1. Moving on to turn 2. Again, an overview of the battlefield. You can see in outline the movement of the concentric alliance forces. And there, again, in a bit more detail. Down here, these guys have moved up because they want to make sure they weren't going to be flank charged by this regiment here. And there, again, you can see the moves. So a bit of movement to cover. We've moved down here with the convoy. We've closed up the gap here so that no units can get through to attack. And the Heralds of Woe have decided to take one for the team to block this cavalry charge to prevent them coming through and attacking the convoy from here. The Heralds of Woe can shoot and have a go at that regiment, but not surprisingly perhaps, they cause no wounds. Right, and here we see the Northern Alliance now moving forward. And again, you can see now how close those units are getting to the bridge, which is causing a bit of concern for the obsidian golems on the bridge. And moves at the top there, we'll see in more detail in a moment. And there you can see on the left there, that regiment of cavalry and the exemplar have charged into the Abyssal Riders' horde. The beast has charged into the knights. And the second regiment of knights over there has charged into the Heralds of Woe, who are beginning to question their life choices. It's a close-up of the battlefield. So, the knights charging into the Heralds of Woe cause 11 wounds. Initial nerve roll of 10, re-rolled to a 6, not enough, and not surprisingly, those Heralds of Woe are dead. And the regiment reforms like that, so it's got the option of either charging towards a convoy or heading down towards a bridge. Over here, the beast charges in, does 5 wounds. That's not bad at all on the knights. A nerve roll there with a 4 is not sufficient to waver or rout them. But over here, the knights and the exemplar charging into the abyssal horde, 7 wounds, and then look at that. Double 1. Now it's unlikely, in fact, they would have wavered or defeated them anyway, but a double 1, not that welcome. And that's the position after the end of that move. Moving on to turn 3. The Abyssals, of course, get regeneration, so they regenerate 2 wounds, drop from 7 to 5. And they're going to charge in, and now the Northern Alliance the Northern Coalition realises their problem in that by having charged in with an individual and the unit, the Abyssal Riders can charge into the individual. If they kill it, they can then overrun into the regiment of knights as well. You'll see the Dark Knights at the top there have gone back into the beast. The convoy has moved and is protected by the Overmaster there. And you can see the golems horde there have moved up, and that closes the gap, so it's not possible for that regiment of enemy knights to charge through into the flank of the convoy. Bit of moving around on the bridge at the bottom, nothing worth talking about. So, Abyssal Riders charge in. Only managed 6 wounds on the exemplar, which isn't great, but the nerve check, a 7 and then a 10, that's him killed. And they then get the overrun into the regiment. And again, do 6 wounds. Not that great on the regiment, but roll 9 for the nerve check. And with no inspiring now, because the exemplar's been killed, that's just enough to waver them. So, That puts that regiment out of action for a turn. Knights charging into the beast do 2 wounds. Do 2 wounds. Even rolling a 9 though, not sufficient to cause any effect on the beast. And that's the situation up there at the end of that turn. Now, one thing I hadn't spotted, having moved the golems, was in the next turn by the Northern Coalition, there's a nice looking flank charge from the Exemplar Forsaker if he wants to take it. And I hadn't spotted that. I had assumed that both of those would be going for the regiment of golems on the south end of the bridge. But that's exactly what he does. He takes that flank charge. And so you can see here the movement. At the bottom there, we've got the horde of Order of Forsaken going into the regiment of the golems, and the Forsaker heading across the river. The other units moving up. A better view, give you a view of what's happening around the bridge. And you can see here that the Villain reconnoitrers have actually moved up and have secured that firing point on the northern side of the river. So that knocks out 50% of the chance of the concentric alliance being able to destroy the bridge. If the one on the southern half goes as well, that's been an opportunity to blow the bridge up. And up here, you can see that the knights who were charged by the Abyssal Riders have moved backwards. That's all they can do as they were wavered. That gives them a bit of flexibility next turn, depending what the Abyssal Riders choose to do, and potentially to charge another target. And at the top there as well, you can see that the Beast and Swain's Villain Rangers have gone into the Dark Knights. Swain's Villain Rangers in the flank is not actually a bad move for them. But look at that, they put another 8 wounds on, taking up to 13 wounds, and then a double 1. And this is going to be a lot more serious for the Northern Coalition.
Here comes a cunning tactical hint from the fox.
For best results, don't roll a double 1 at a critical time in the battle.
That was a cunning tactical hint from the fox.
Yeah, well, that was a not very helpful cunning tactical hint, but this is going to be a real problem now, as those 2 units are now stuck in a combat. They'd assumed they would win and would be able to either get stuck into the Abyssal Riders to their left, or to follow up the convoy. And this is going to be a real problem as we move on. Down here, the Forsaker Exemplar in the flank and the Knights in the front, charging into this horde of Obsidian Golems, managed to do 10 wounds. They might have expected perhaps to do a bit more, but 10 might be enough, depending on the nerve roll. And they roll a 7, which is just enough to destroy and rout that unit, except there's a bit of inspiring standing right behind them, and on the re-roll they survive. And down here on the bridge, we've got the horde of Order of Forsaken charging in, do 5 wounds to that regiment, and then nerve roll of 6, which is not sufficient to rout them. And there's a position at the end of that turn. And the 2 critical things to note is, first of all, that double 1 up there, which has tied those units into combat when they really wanted to be moving south towards the bridge. And this combat here, which the assumption had been with a flank charge, they could well have broken and routed that unit. But in fact, they're also now stuck in combat. So a bit unfortunate for the Northern Coalition there. Moving on to turn 4. And looking at the movements there, and in a bit more detail, you can see here that regeneration on the Abyssal Riders, they managed to get 1 wound back, so drop from 5 to 4 wounds. And they decide they're going to charge in to finish off that regiment of knights. On the right there, you can see the Dark Knights, having scored that double 1, decide they're going to counter-charge into Swains. They think they stand a better chance of killing that than the beast. Down here, it's a bit of a muddle. You can see the convoys move forward again. The horde of obsidian golems has chosen to countercharge the Exemplar Forsaker, and you can see there on the left that the Dark Lord on horse has gone into the flank of that regiment of knights. He probably won't do a lot, but he might manage to strip off their thunderous charge. And down at the bottom we've got a charge by the regiment of golems into the Forsaker horde, and the greater obsidian golem has moved forward, and in the next turn he's been surged into the flank of that combat. So that's the position there. They managed to only put 5 wounds, bizarrely, onto that unit. You'd have expected a lot more than that. And only managed to roll a 5 on the nerve test. So that horde survives. Up here, the charge in there managed to do 5 wounds onto the Exemplar Forsaker. But even rolling an 8 on the nerve check, that's not sufficient to waver or rout him. And there, the Dark Lord on horse manages only to do 1 wound, which won't be enough to do anything, even with a big nerve check, but it does strip off their thunderous. Up here, the charge in there, another 8 wounds on that regiment, and failing a double 1, that should be enough. And it's not. A 10, and with no inspiring, no reroll, they are routed. And the unit turns, and you'll see why in a moment they've turned to that particular angle. Over there, the knights managed to put 5 wounds onto Swain's Villain Rangers, but even with rolling a 7, that's not enough to waver or rout them. That's the position, and you can see at the top there that the horde of Abyssal Riders has moved in such a way that they're out of the charge arc of the beast, and they're now in a position to either assist over here or to head south to help down on the bridge. Right, looking at what the Northern Coalition now does, down on the bridge, the Horde of Forsakers go back into that regiment of Obsidian Golems. There is a massive combo charge onto that horde of golems with the Exemplar, with a unit in the front and a unit of knights in the flank, and the beast moves up. There's a better view of that combo charge. So we've got in the front the Order of Redemption, and in the side Order of the Brotherhood. Now that ought to be enough, even with that defense 6, to kill that unit, you would think. And up there the beast has moved across. It can't charge, but it can at least breath weapon onto those knights, and the Swain's Villain Rangers have charged the knights on that side. They only need to do 1 wound to force a nerve check, which hopefully will be enough to kill them this time. So that beast, having moved forward, is going to have a shot. The only target he's got is the Greater Obsidian Golem, and not surprisingly for a defense 6 unit, he causes no wounds. Up here, again, beast shoots at that horde of Abyssal Riders. They were on 4 wounds, and they're still on 4 wounds, because there were no wounds caused from shooting that time either. Swain's Villain Rangers charged in, managed to do 2 more wounds, and no double 1, that unit is routed. And that's how the units look, reform at the end of that turn. Down here, the charge into the regiment of the Obsidian Golems. They're already on 5 wounds, 3 more wounds were caused, and we rolled a 5 on the nerve check, which is 1 short of routing them. So that's a bit unlucky. And in there, the charge into that did so many wounds I ran out of dice. No double 1 though, and that horde of golems is routed. And that's how they reform. And now the bridge and the convoy are looking pretty at risk. The regiment of the Brotherhood there overran 5 inches to get close to the bridge. The other units there just reformed. And there's a view again the end of that turn, and you can see how much of the enemy is threatening the bridge now on both sides. So moving on to turn 5. Here we are, the Northern Coalition has moved, and you can see that the convoy has gone onto the bridge. One more turn and it will be clear of the bridge. The Regiment of Golems and the Great Obsidian Golem have charged back into that Forsaken Regiment, and I don't fancy their chances over there. And on the left there you can see the two individuals. So that is the Dark Lord, Mounted Dark Lord, and the Overmaster have gone into the Forsaker. And one thing that the Northern Coalition hadn't spotted was that by moving forward that 5 inches, they had just come into the charge range of the Abyssal Riders from the northern end of the road. If they'd only gone 4 inches, they'd have been safe, but by going 5, they actually were caught, and that's going to be a problem for them. You can also see on that slide, because we don't see it later on, that the Abyssal Riders managed to regenerate 3 of their 4 wounds, so they're now down to 1 wound. And there it is. So the charge in there managed to do another 7 wounds on the horde there, bring up to a total of 12 and a nerve roll of 6, and that horde is routed. And they turn like that, so Great Obsidian Golem turns to face the north, ready to assist if required. The regiment don't move because they don't want to turn facing and risk blocking the convoy from crossing the bridge. In there, the 2 individuals charging into the Forsaker, and look at that, they've chosen another 7 wounds. That's rather overachieving. 12 altogether, and the nerve roll of 8 and men 8, and he is routed. And as you might imagine, that horde into the flank of that regiment routs that regiment of knights. And that's the position at the end of turn 5. Now at this stage, we realised there was not much point going on. There was nothing that the Northern Coalition could to stop the convoy escaping. The units of the Concentric Alliance on the north bank were probably not going to be able to cross safely, and we called the game there. And this is what we thought would happen on turn 6. If the convoy would cross safely, the bridge would be demolished. A substantial part of the Concentric Alliance was abandoned north of the river, but never mind, it's a price worth weighing for a glorious victory. So, what were the reasons for success of the Concentric Alliance? Well, I think there's 3 things. First of all, the double one, particularly against the knights on the north there, held up 2 alliance units for a turn and allowed the Concentric Alliance to move the Abyssal Riders south, and that was a huge bonus. The second thing was unlucky nerve rolls elsewhere, for instance against the Golem Regiment on the south side of the bridge, and the diversion of the Exemplar Forsaker into the flank of the Golem herd. Although had that managed to kill the horde of golems in 1 turn, it would probably have been worth it, but as it wasn't, it got stuck there. That resulted in a traffic jam on the north side of the bridge, and was insufficient force on the south side of the bridge to kill that regiment of golems and allow the Northern Coalition to capture the firing point on that side of the bridge. So, success to the Concentric Alliance. Hope you enjoyed that report. Thank you very much for watching.